Imagine if someone killed your father and then stole your inheritance. You would probably want to get it back. But what if this happened 1,000 years ago? Would you still go to war over family land? But these holy wars weren't about religion at first. They were known for their military prowess. He called for an invasion of the Holy Land to wrestle Jerusalem away from the Turks and restore Christian access to the city. There were 3 routes to Jerusalem, and all of them were difficult. And thousands of Europeans answered his call. This meant crossing the mountains that formed the Armenian highlands, which was doable in summer but deadly in winter. By 1097, there were so many crusaders in Anatolia that the local governor invited them to pillage the cities along the trade route. Although he technically controlled Anatolia, the region had been ruled by Muslim governors since 640, and when the Seljuks invaded, he couldn't stop them. Now he had more pressing concerns, like the growing threat of the First Crusade. At the Battle of Dorylaeum in 1097, they defeated the Seljuks and continued their march south until they reached Antioch. When the Crusaders arrived, they laid siege to the city, but they soon ran into trouble. As they made their way toward the coast, Crusaders pillaged all the way to the gates of Constantinople. For months, the Crusaders struggled to keep their own men inside the camp. Many left to plunder nearby villages, while others simply walked away from the army. The next morning, the Crusaders held a victory parade through the city and divided the spoils among themselves. Each time the Crusaders approached a new city, they demanded submission or prepared to lay siege. Many would have preferred the sea route, traveling around the Mediterranean coast, but it was a long way, and pirates were everywhere. Godfrey of Bouillon, the elected leader of the Crusaders, wanted to take Jerusalem, not rule it. Men, women, and children were put to death, and the city was burned to the ground. So the Crusaders turned to God for help. Raymond IV of Toulouse claimed that God spoke to him in a dream and told him to find a secret entrance to the city. He recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, marking the end of the First Crusade. So most people stuck to the land route, and although they had no interest in expanding into Europe, they did stop the Byzantines from accessing the Holy Land, which upset European Christians. Although gunpowder originated in China, it didn't arrive in Europe until the 13th century. On the way, they built castles to protect travelers along the road and ensure the Muslims wouldn't attack supply lines. Not only did they build churches and monasteries throughout the Middle East, but their Latin alphabet is still used in Arabic countries today. It was about politics? Well, that's exactly what happened during the Crusades. This began the arms race that changed medieval Europe forever. At the same time, Italian merchants were exploring the world and encountering amazing riches. In the 8th century, Muslim armies seized control of Jerusalem, the city considered holy by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. The Byzantine Empire, based in modern-day, was being pushed around by the Seljuk Turks, a nomadic Central Asian tribe that had converted to Islam. After all, gunpowder could make their ships explode with force, but their goal was worth it. If they succeeded, they would win God's favor and receive special treatment when they died. In fact, everyone involved in the siege of Jerusalem was promised remission of their sins. This promise attracted many sinners, including whole families. So in 1095, Pope Urban II decided he would solve both problems with one stone. These warriors were called Crusaders, and they quickly set out on a 2,000-mile journey through some of the most inhospitable landscapes in the world. Most Crusaders took the land route through Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. For 2 weeks, they marched across Anatolia, sleeping in the open and subsisting on what little food they could carry. Pope Urban II told them not to bring women or children, but those who did were given a noble excuse to sin. But once inside, they ran into trouble. The emperor didn't want them there. He tried everything to stop them. He sent ambassadors, made false promises, and even threatened to excommunicate them. But nothing worked. The Crusaders were determined to reach Jerusalem. As the Crusaders marched south, they encountered more Turkish forces. Today the city is divided between Turkey and Syria. But in 1098, it was ruled by a Muslim dynasty called the There weren't many defenders in the city, just 3,000 soldiers, so they were able to hold out. Even though the Pope had promised them forgiveness, it wasn't enough to keep them fighting. It was risky, but it worked. The Crusaders snuck into Antioch under cover of darkness and opened the gates from within. After a month of resting and resupplying in Antioch, the Crusaders headed south toward their final destination, Jerusalem. This time, the Crusaders didn't have to fight their way through, because the local rulers knew they were doomed. Finally, in 1099, they reached the outskirts of Jerusalem, but before they could attack, the Muslim leader offered them a deal. So he accepted the deal and allowed the Muslims to leave the city unharmed. But when the Crusaders entered Jerusalem, they didn't show mercy. Over the next few years, European leaders established 4 Crusader states in the Levant region around Jerusalem, but they were always outnumbered by Muslims. So when Saladin came along, it didn't take long to drive the Crusaders out. Although the Crusaders had lost, their presence in the region would be felt for centuries. And now you know why. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. When the Crusaders returned to Europe, they brought back stories of incredible wealth in the East. But in order to acquire these luxuries, they needed a powerful weapon, gunpowder. It fell into the hands of Italian merchants who were eager to use it in their business. But it also caught the attention of the ruling class, who saw its potential to increase their power and wealth. To learn how gunpowder changed medieval Europe, check out the series in the description below. It's an epic story filled with betrayal, magic, and warfare. In fact, Episode 2 will premiere on November, but you can watch Episode 1 right now on a streaming platform. Thanks for watching.